What you're looking at is a photo of a vehicle after a truck collision. And most truck drivers are excellent drivers. They go through special training, they're hired and vetted by companies to drive. And so don't take this video in the wrong way. I've represented a tremendous amount of truckers, and I know most of them to be great people. Unfortunately, there are a few bad truckers. And when a bad trucker causes a collision, those can be devastating injuries. And the reason is the sheer size and weight of a truck. Most trucks, an 18-wheeler, the average weight is 80,000 pounds, which is 40 tons. A car may weigh 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. So you're looking at 16 times the weight. These huge trucks have tremendous momentum. They take about 40% more distance to stop all that weight. And when a truck hits a car or a van with passengers, they're frequently killed or very seriously injured, and that's why they end up here. So over the last 28 or so years, I've handled a tremendous amount of trucking cases, and I want to relay some of those experiences and talk to you about some facts with trucking collisions. The first thing you need to know is that if you're in a car accident, and I just taught this, I'm a professor at Harris-Stowe State University, I just taught my class about the difference between state and federal jurisdiction. One example is trucking. Truckers are federally regulated, and the reason that they're federally regulated is that it's interstate trucking. So there's a Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act or regulation that regulates over-the-road truckers. And these federal laws are designed to protect other drivers and passengers while on the road. And of course, the Commerce Clause grants Congress the power to regulate interstate trade. That's Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Commercial trucks travel 93,512,000,000 highway miles per year. So that's enough to travel around the world almost 4 million times. That's why they're important to our national interests, and they're federally regulated. There's over 3 million 18-wheeler trucks registered in the United States and over 800,000 commercial drivers. So the trucking industry dominates the transportation industry. It's 83.7% of the revenue of the United States. It's over $650 billion in trucking revenues. It's much, much more than railway or air or water counterparts. Of course, we handle frequently railroad cases and waterway collisions, but overall we handle much more trucking collisions just because of the sheer volume of them. As a result of this huge industry, we've decided as a country that they need to be regulated, and one of the things that we regulate is the amount of insurance. So if a truck is over 10,000 pounds and it's traveling on interstate highways, it is required to have at least $750,000 worth of liability insurance. So if a commercial truck hits you, I know that it has at least $750,000. If it's carrying toxic materials, it's required to maintain at least $5 million in coverage. Now at this firm, at Cantor Injury Law, we found a lot of cases where there's a $750,000 policy or $1 million policy, but then there's a $25 or $50 million umbrella policy, additional insurance through another insurer or through the same insurer that will provide coverage in the event of a devastating injury. Of course, the trucking industry doesn't want to tell you that. That's why you lawyer up, because when they tell you there's $750,000 of insurance, that may be true, but it may also be true that there's an additional $10 million behind it. The types of cases that we see generally arise out of negligence. That is the failure to use the highest degree of care, that degree of care that a very careful trucker would use under the same or similar circumstance. That's the definition of negligence, a very careful person. So the failure to use that degree of care. And we've all seen these, texting and driving, drinking and driving, not paying attention, eating a meal, combing your hair, whatever it is, playing with the radio, or simple inattention. A lot of the times people are sleep deprived, and we're going to talk about that in a moment when we talk about trucking logs. But we see a lot of cases that arise out of negligence, and the driver may not have much. So what do? We use the theory of responding at superior, where which literally is Latin for let the master answer, and we sue the trucking company. Another way of saying it is vicarious liability. So someone might be responsible for the acts of another. We see these negligence cases, speeding, inattention, etc. We also see negligent maintenance of vehicles. We see them hauling too much weight, hauling excessive weight. We see them not maintaining a safe distance from the vehicle in front of them, not having proper sight lines. The Department of Transportation also requires that these vehicles be checked, that you do a pre-trip inspection, so that we want to check to make sure that that truck is in good working order, that its brakes works, that its lights works, its horn and everything else. And then we want to regulate the driver. We don't want exhausted drivers on our roadways, because when that happens we end up with collisions like this. And this is a client of mine, Mr. Jerry Moore. We can't tell you the name of the defendant truck company or the insurance company, but they paid $2.2 million recently to resolve this case. The driver logs requirements, drivers are only allowed to drive during a 14-hour time period, so they have to be off for 10 hours and then drive for during the 14-hour time period. But they can't drive if more than 8 hours has passed since their last drive log. So you can't drive for 14 hours, take 8 hours off, and then start driving again, because they're worried about not sleeping. And I'll give you an example, the Tracy Morgan case. You remember the comedian Tracy Morgan? He was in a limo, he had an accident in 2014. It was caused by a sleep-deprived Walmart driver. The driver had been awake for 28 hours after driving more than 800 miles from Georgia to Delaware. He had the New Jersey Turnpike, and he killed another person in the limo that was in with Tracy Morgan and seriously injured Mr. Morgan. We all watched that devastating injury and collision and lawsuit, for which Walmart paid tremendously. So we see wrongful death cases. We frequently represent families and loved ones of those that have died as a result of driver negligence in both car and truck collision cases. We've had cases in this office where drivers should have never been hired by a trucking company. They had a criminal history, they had medical dependence issues, they had a bad driving record, and they simply should not have been driving. We've seen cases where the driver says, well, the truck brakes weren't maintained properly. We've seen cases where people were decapitated because the truck didn't have the safety bar that protects cars from running into the back of the truck, the undercarriage. Trucks manufactured after January 26, 1998 must include a rear impact guard. That's that metal bar I just referenced, and if they don't, there's liability there. It's reasonably foreseeable that a driver might not see a truck stopped. I'm not saying that's not negligent, but it's foreseeable, and so the trucking company needs to know that those type of rear-end collisions happen, and when you run into the back of a truck, you shouldn't be decapitated, and you won't be if the truck has that rear impact guard. If a truck has harmed you, what should you do? The very first thing is to check on your passengers and call 911. Obviously, get all the emergency care that you need. Request a copy of the police report. Be careful who you talk to. Record the scene. Take pictures and call a lawyer. At Cantor Injury Law, we will be happy to come and immediately do an inspection. We'll bring our engineers and our accident reconstructionists out, and we will gather the electronic control module, or EDR. That's important. That EDR box records the data of the truck. How many times did they hit the brake? Did they hit the brake aggressively? What were the RPMs prior to the collision? It provides important data to win your case. So you need to get the police report. You need not to make recorded statements. You do need to get the electronic data recorder information. You need to hold that truck. You need to send them a spoliation letter saying don't change that truck, or the evidence. Most of that data is kept for 30 days and can be downloaded and interpreted by experts. It records the sudden braking or acceleration, whether the truck was in cruise control, and the activity of that truck preceding the collision. It talks about hard stops. How many times did that truck come to a complete and hard stop? It also may have communications between the truck and the dispatcher. We're interested in those driver's logs and the driver fatigue issue and any mechanical problems that truck may have had. So, in conclusion, most truck drivers are good. There's literally billions of dollars and miles made and driven in trucks, but when they go bad, they're really bad, and that's when you need a lawyer. At Cantor Injury Law, we never charge a fee unless we win. Our number is 314-628-9999. We've got 7 lawyers here and over 25 staff, and I will personally meet with you or a loved one should the need arise. Thanks, and thanks for watching.